You're listening to the B&H Photography Podcast. For 50 years, B&H has been the professional source for photography, video, audio, and more. For your favorite gear, news, and reviews, visit us at B&H.com or download the B&H app to your iPhone or Android device. Now here's your host, Alan Weitz.
Greetings and welcome to the B&H Photography Podcast. Happy Thanksgiving, and boy, have we got a feast for you today. In honor of hip-hop's 50th anniversary, we're releasing a special encore presentation of one of our favorite shows of all time, A History of Hip-Hop Photography, which originally aired in November of 2017. So, as you drive to Alice's restaurant for a nice turkey dinner, take a walk down memory lane with John Harris, Jason Tables, and myself in this epic chat with Vikki Tobak of the Contact High Project and photographers Janette Beckman, Eric Johnson, and Danny Hastings. But before we start, a request from all of us to all of you. If you enjoy listening to our show, take a moment to leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're not already a subscriber, subscribe. It's absolutely free. We'd love to have you as part of the family, and fear not, I promise you I'll be doing all the dishes after dinner. Without further ado, let's talk hip-hop. Today we're going to be talking about hip-hop photography, and to keep the conversation on track, we have not one, not two, not three, but four guests joining us today. Vikki Tobak is a journalist and former CNN producer who currently writes and produces for Complex, Mass Appeal, and The Fader. Vikki is the author of Contact High, Hip-Hop Photography plus Visual Culture. Janette Beckman began her career at the dawn of punk rock for the Face and Melody Maker magazines, photographing The Clash, Boy George, and ultimately 3 Police album covers. Moving to New York in 1982, she was drawn to the underground hip-hop scene and photographed pioneers such as Run DMC, Slick Rick, Salt and Pepper, Big Daddy Kane, KRS-One, and many, many others. Janette has published 4 books, and her photographs are in the permanent collections of the Smithsonian Museum and the Museum of the City of New York. Danny Hastings, a Panamanian Mexican photographer, initially moved to New York City to study engineering, but wouldn't you know it, he fell in love with photography, kissed his plumb line goodbye, bought himself a camera, and has since shot more than 150 album covers. Danny's most notable work includes Enter the Wu-Tang, 36 Chambers, Big Pun's Capital Punishment, and Nas' I Am, among others. He also gets credit for directing the feature film The Love Potion. Eric Johnson was born in Newark, New Jersey. He came of age as a photographer in the New York club scene. He's created iconic hip-hop images of Notorious B.I.G., Lauryn Hill, Dipset, Lil Wayne, as well as newer artists like G Herbo and Cakes Da Killa. Eric's work stretches across music genre that includes Lady Gaga, Bruno Mars, and Maxwell, and he helms upstairs at Eric's, a loft space in Manhattan that is equal parts studio, gallery, disco, lounge, and design studio. Also, let's be clear, none of our guests should be defined solely for their work in hip-hop photography. Each of our guests has established themselves in the world of editorial and advertising photography. Hip-hop is just part of their story, albeit an important one. Okay, let's start with Vikki. Vikki, tell us about Contact High. How was the project born? Where is it now? And what's the goal going forward?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having us. Contact High, as you mentioned, I'm a journalist, and before that, in a previous life, worked in the music business, worked with Gangstar and some other artists. And so when I started writing about music, I naturally just started thinking about how the role photography has played in music as well. And fast forward to about 2 years ago, I was flipping through the Magnum Contact Sheets book and started thinking about all the hip-hop shoots that I've been on as a publicist and as a journalist as well, and was like, I would really love to see some of the outtakes of hip-hop photography. And beyond that, too, I said it's important to start looking and start archiving and start celebrating the work of this great group of shooters that have been doing the work for so long. And I was just curious, what made them point their camera at these very early, roots of this music that was once considered a subculture. So I started doing interviews, one by one. I started it as a column for Mass Appeal, and Janette was actually the first with her Slick Rick. And, just asking questions like, what did you shoot this with? How did you decide on the ultimate shot? What was happening in your life at the time? What was happening in the life of the artist at the time? What was happening in the life of hip hop at the time? And, having done now several of these interviews and working on this project as a book and an exhibition, it really tells, this big narrative that I think it's time to tell.
Actually, I have one question for you, and we have a bunch for the photographers. But how did you define hip hop? Did you kind of have to say, okay, I'm sorry, this artist doesn't quite make the cut as hip hop, but even though we love the photos, or their work changed over the years, did you have issues and discussions on this?
I think it was a combination of factors. For me, it's more of just like a gut instinct. But yeah, the criteria is it has to be a good photo. It has to have a reason for being there in the story arc of hip hop. It has to be a photographer who not just took one shot, but really, was dedicated to shooting hip hop. And it has to be something that maybe is like etched in the memory of hip hop fans, right, or people who love hip hop. So yeah, it was like a combination of factors.
One photo on that contact sheet is an iconic shot, and the rest are alternate takes from that. That's kind of the idea.
Yeah. And it's a way, kind of see into the mind of the photographer, like see how they think about sequencing and, working with the artist. Like I always ask, like, did the artist have any idea of how they wanted to be portrayed, and what was that like? And it's just a way of like seeing into their mind. And, I think that's such a fascinating part of it that really gets lost sometimes.
I thought it was cool how you could kind of see some of the vulnerability that you may not have seen, or some of the humor. Like the shot of Biggie comes to mind with the crown. It's like they had the outtakes with him smiling and kind of making funny faces. I thought that was kind of a cool moment that you weren't used to seeing him portrayed that way.
Yeah, well, it also tells the story of like how choices are made in media and people who control imagery, and how, certain choices that get made then tell this story to the public. But yeah, you ask people who knew Biggie personally, and they see the smiling photo of him, and they're like, "That's the Biggie that we knew."
And a lot of these photos are taken some for album covers, others for magazine shoots, I'm sure, and maybe a variation. But to the photographers, did you have final choice on a lot of these photos that we're seeing now, or was it a combination of record labels and artists and everything?
Not always. I mean, sometimes you do a shoot and you think that's the shot, and then, the art director or the record company would choose something completely different. And then, but, being a photographer, you have shows and you can show the other images. It's just so great. Now you can put them up on social media and websites, and people can share those.
And you have copyright for most of the photos that we're talking about? Or?
I think, I'm not sure, you guys correct me, but I think the law is if you took the photo, you own the copyright.
It belongs to you from the moment you go click.
Right, as long as you didn't sign it away. Yeah, as long as you didn't sign it away to the record company.
Right. Yeah. Has anybody here, we've been, go ahead. Yeah.
In my case, I did a lot of album, like 90% of my work was album covers. So you do sign a partial buyout, which gave the record company to use your photographs, obviously, for the album cover and all the promotional stuff, but you kept merchandising rights.
And you own the licensing rights, too,
yes,
right?
Yes. So in the 90s, record companies were not in the business of merchandising, so they couldn't take your picture, put it on a T-shirt and sell it. That was not part of their business. That was always, my right to handle with the artist, obviously, because, the artist will want to print the T-shirt and sell it. So it will come as an added business to my end. So,
which is actually a question I had for you guys, which is, how do you guys feel when you see these images out there, whether they're done with your approval and then a paycheck that may come with it, or there's a lot of
iconic images out there, and then the people who went click are not getting a dime for it. So I imagine you see that here too.
You see a lot of people kind of remixing some of these,
I'm not coming across any of my pictures being used like that. The artists from the 90s know the rules, and I haven't really shot anything new. Record companies right now are trying to get you a full buyout for everything, and I'm not, trying to do that. So,
Janette, I saw you make a face in terms of have your pictures been, have you had experience with your...
So many of them.
Me too.
And it's
It's
not
crazy.
really the record companies or the artists. It's, small companies, T-shirt companies. There's an artist right now that's taken one of my Slick Rick pictures and has made a whole career out of
That's crazy.
reproducing it and selling it for $15,000. I mean, he's made a screen print of it. And, without permission. And I'm fine to collaborate. I collaborate with a lot of artists. I have this series called The Mashup, which I've done with a lot of graffiti artist friends. And, it's a collaboration between a group of friends. But when someone takes your image and then doesn't own up to it.
And then buys lunch on and doesn't invite you. That's not good.
Exactly. And they go, oh, yeah, we got it off the internet. I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean to say
But I
you
think,
own it.
Yeah, and I think it's something that's important to talk about from a generational perspective, because I think nowadays it's so second nature to take things off the internet. It's so disconnected from the artists. A lot of times people will see photos and so I run the Contact High Instagram, and there was a photographer, Al Pereira. He has this very famous photo of Biggie and Tupac, and I had asked him for the contact sheet of it. Fast forward, I'll skip all the in between, but on that same contact sheet was a photo, the first ever photo of Nas and Tupac, and the internet went nuts.
Yeah, it was everywhere.
It was everywhere. Yeah. And it was, it was a great find. It was very much in spirit of what this project is looking at archives and finding stuff that, may have been lost. But I bring it up because all the comments were I can't wait to make this into a T-shirt. There were 500 comments on that, on Nas's feed. People were like, yo, I'm rocking this as a T-shirt. And I was I kept responding to everyone. I was like, let me just stop. Because I was like, this is infringement of copyright. I was like the grandma on there, you can't do that. But they weren't doing it in a malicious way. There's this culture of...
The precedence has been set already for doing this on many levels.
Well, they think it belongs to the. They think it belongs to the
ether,
to the world. So
if it's on my screen, it's mine.
Well, yeah, just because.
Yeah.
So it's I feel like one of those people that from my generation, it's an entire business just dealing with people who use my stuff illegally. It's fans, but it's also proper website, ABC News, all of these crazy places that just use your photos, and they kind of act so casual the way that they speak to you as if this belongs to everyone because I see it over the internet. So somehow, luckily enough for me, even though it's annoying, we're able to flip it. So that's a business with just cleaning up the internet and getting your things back. I would never have expected I was creating something that would be so valuable later until the internet came along, and it was everywhere. So, but the other thing I want to say is that getting things copywritten in addition to thinking you own them is very important. It's a very big deal in regards to cleaning that up and being compensated fairly, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I did a search on hip-hop tattoos, and there's a lot of, I think, some of your guys' photos.
I actually seen those, yeah.
But I love that idea.
Right.
I mean, that's an original piece of art, one piece. If somebody wants to take one of
and
my
if you
pictures...
want to sell your tattoo to somebody, okay, go for it,
Chop my leg off.
Chuck your arm off right now. No, but if somebody wants to take a picture and just use it one time, I'm
I agree.
totally cool. Or they want to do a mural with
Right.
my LL Cool J picture, that's fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
But making a line of T-shirts and selling it, that's not cool.
If I could just take a jump back for one second, we're talking about going back over the contact sheets. You have your initial gut reaction the first time you look at it and you go, okay, there's a money shot right there. Has anybody here since gone back over sheets and say, something, looking back with 20/20 vision, that is really the shot that should have gone?
Yes.
Okay.
Totally. I'm doing it right now. I'm working on a book, and it's kind of, my history from my punk pictures to now. And I'm going back looking at old contact sheets I shot in 1980 and going, oh my God, this is an amazing
love to
picture. I
look
never
through those.
saw it. Yeah, it's so cool, right?
I have my
Yeah.
very first contact
You
sheet.
should
It's
share.
very boring, by the way, but I do have it.
You do?
I do, yeah.
That's amazing.
1968.
Oh, wow.
7.
Wow. That's cool.
I think that leads to a question that I have for Janette. Can you talk about any parallels that you saw between punk and hip hop?
Well, I think there were huge parallels because, I grew up in London and I came out of art school and punk was happening all around, and it was totally like a kind of street revolution, and it was coming from, what we call in England working class. You probably call it blue collar or something here, but it was kids expressing themselves for the first time and really going against, the Queen and the way the status quo was, and just speaking up and going, this isn't right. And it was huge, and I followed that, and then I saw my first hip-hop show in 1982 and was blown away by that.
In the States? Or
in London. It was the first hip-hop show to ever come to London. And in that show was Fab Five Freddy, Africa Bambaataa, the Rocksteady Crew, Futura, Dondi, Rammelsy. Like, it was an amazing...
The Double Dutch Girls.
The Double Dutch Girls, exactly. It was an amazing show, and we'd never seen anything like it. And then I came here that Christmas, and it was all happening. And it was the same thing. Kids, as far as I could see from, poor communities, the Bronx and Harlem, and the place was a mess, the economy was bad. Kids were speaking up and talking about their lives, and it was a total parallel to me, and I was just fascinated by that.
Did you feel a part of the scene? I mean, I guess this is a question for everybody that I wanted to ask. Did you feel like you were part of the scene that you were photographing, or did you feel like a documentarian coming in, or just an artist being hired?
I probably, being me, didn't really think about it. I was just here, kind of in it, and I was obsessed by it, and everybody, it was actually great for me coming from another country because, I'd go to the Bronx to photograph some, Africa Bambaataa, and they'd be like, where are you from? You ain't from here. And I'd be like, no, I'm from London. And they were like, what are you doing here? And we'd have this dialogue, and it helped me get to a lot of places that maybe if I was an American, I wouldn't have been accepted so easily.
Interesting.
So, I was... I guess I'm always a little separate because I'm not born here, but I feel like I was definitely embedded in it.
Danny, what about you for example, with Wu-Tang Clan? Were you in the scene? Were you hanging out?
I feel similar to her story. I'm from Panama.
Yeah.
I was I was there until I was like 15. I came when I was 16, 17, and I became a man here. And I started taking pictures very early. I come from very humble beginnings, you know what I mean? I grew up poor. I didn't have a lot, and I sort of, when I came here, I landed in Jackson Heights. So I became part of the scene. Yeah. Hip hop was all around me. I was living in the hood. I was taking pictures of all my friends. So yes, I was accepted pretty quickly, I became, all my friends were, Black and Latino. I started loving the music. However, when I was in Panama, little does she know, she was a huge inspiration for me because I was a fan of rock and roll music before hip hop happened for me. So I was listening to all the Police albums. I was listening to Rush. I was into everything that was being imported to Panama. I had three of the albums that defined my teenage years, and one was Señora Bondada, I think,
Yep.
She shot that, and Outlanders the More, I had that too, and I was the kind of kid that will read everything on an album. Like, I will go, not just the cover, but I will also try to play music. I play the guitar, so I will try to play Message in a Bottle, and I will try to play, Every Breath You Take, and I really thought I was going to be a musician.
We brought a couple of guitars in here. We'd like to...
bring it on. So, I fast forward to the story. I had those albums for 5 years of my life. I came here and I was, and when I had the chance to shoot an artist, I think, I was very, conceptual in terms of putting albums together and, lighting wise. I was very into my lighting just because, the work that I had around me before I shot hip hop.
And Eric, I want to ask you, did you look back to earlier types of photography, earlier music photography, or anything like that?
You know what? It's like so funny. I feel like I don't know what to say because he has my story. Seriously. When I was, when you were asking about like the parallels, it was, now I look back and it's very interesting now, but it's like when I was a teen, I would come on the PATH train from Newark to New York City when I was like maybe 14 or 15, and I was obsessed with going to record stores and bookstores, and specifically obsessed with the England punk scene. So it's like that was something that was so not familiar with, you know, being in Newark, it wasn't like, but it was something I was really obsessed with. And so I just go there and hang out for like hours, like, you know, as a kid, like, and check out a lot of the stuff that Janette had done. So it's like that I went from there to hanging out at Sleeping Bag Records when hip hop did start becoming a thing, and I was listening to Red Alert and those DJs, and somehow I got connected to this girl at Sleeping Bag Records, and it's like, once again, it's like I start seeing Janette's images everywhere, and I'm just trying to get that first gig, you know what I'm saying? But I would hang out there for
Janette,
ever.
right.
So yeah, that
Who knew?
I feel like as far as being more connected, I feel like more connected as later in life than to a scene. Like before, I was kind of like showing up on shoots and doing them. I feel like my style later became more like a point and shoot type thing, where I kind of am more like involved in the culture than I was back at that time. That's why I don't feel like I have so many behind the scenes shots the way that a lot of my heroes, I look at their photos and it gives me like peaks, and you know, I feel like that's totally my style now, but in the beginning.
Who are some of those heroes? Who are some of the folks you would think of, besides Janette, of course?
Well, I mean, you know, I don't know. I mean, to be totally honest, I'm sure there's a lot of people, but somehow because our lives kept like crossing, I know her name, but I didn't really sweat like photographers to know every person that shot those photos that, you know what I'm saying? But I just happened to came across Janette like often enough to be like, okay, I know who she is.
Well, Vikki, are there any photographers you can think of that maybe started as part of the crew, or part of, maybe they were a musician and they went away from the music to become a photographer, that kind of came right out of that scene?
Well, I know like J. Rue has really gotten into photography, so I hear.
Yeah, he's a photographer now.
He's a photographer.
Good one too.
Yeah, he lives in Berlin now, and
No way.
yeah. Ricky Powell, yes. I mean, I think there's a lot, like, you know, when I interview the artists now and from back then, they're more now into like archiving the story of the band, like DJ Premier. Like he's like, I really need to gather like a proper archive on Gangstar. You know, they have a big anniversary coming up next year, and so the artists, you know, that I talk to are more interested in like preserving the visual archive of that, you know, of their work. But yeah, I mean, the only artist I can think of that actually, well, and I mean, Young Guru, he's a young, you know, like a younger shooter, but he's someone that's been in the business for a long time, and is, you know, starting to take shooting really seriously. Yeah, I can't think of anyone else off the top of my head. I'm sure there are some that I'm just missing.
In terms of the 36 Chambers album, that album was, when that came out, no one had heard anything like it. I mean, it was so different. It was so esoteric.
Yeah.
The lyrics and all the kung fu samples and all the, you know, craziness that, and RZA was like the mastermind.
Yeah.
Of all of that. How was that a collaborative?
Yeah,
thing
I mean,
with the cover, like what's the story behind the cover?
To a certain extent, yeah, of course. I mean, I've never heard anything like that before, and I wanted to make sure that I created a visual that nobody's seen anything like that before in hip hop. You know, like, you know, I was a fan of like Pink Floyd album covers. You know what I mean? Like you will listen to the music and you see like a pig flying in a wall and a German looking legs monster thing. You know, and it would just be like, wow, like, I want to do that, you know? And when I met with the RZA, he was kind of telling me about the sound. And I went to the actual studio where they recorded. It was called Firehouse. And it was like a dungeon. It was like there was holes in the walls, wires was coming out. blunt guts all over the place, 40s, smoking. You know, like, it was just like crazy. But I mean, the sound was like, yo, what is this that I'm listening to? Going back, when I got the phone call to shoot the Wu-Tang Clan, I already did like a couple of album covers. I already had Return of the Boom Bap with Carries One, and I had RCA as a client already. And I got the phone call, and I was in Atlanta, right? I learned pretty quickly that you had to network to get business. You know, I didn't have a job. I didn't have 9 to 5. This was my career kind of happening. So I heard that there was a hip-hop conference in Atlanta. So I'm like, man, I'm going there. I'm going to get some clients. So while I was there, I got the phone call from RCA. And our director's name is Jackie Murphy, super good friend of mine. And she was like, hey, man, you're going to shoot this group. It's called the Wu-Tang Clan. I already heard one song, Protect Your Neck, and Method Man. I was like, oh, man, this is awesome. But I never seen them. And coincidentally, they were performing in a new showcase group in that conference that I was. I was like, oh, shit. You know, the Wu-Tang is going to be here, so let me go and check them out. So, you know, I go with all my boys, you know. I mean, it's the 90s, so you always rock with, you know, the boys everywhere, you know. It's like, let's go and check it out. So we're you know, I'm on stage. Like, I was like kind of like on stage and just checking the group out or whatever. This group that it was going on is like new music. And all of a sudden, this dude with a mask shows up on stage, and the rap group that is performing, they're looking at this guy like, who is this? Like, and this guy has a hoodie and a stocking mask, right? Just kind of like grilling at the group, and you know, and then all of a sudden another guy with a mask comes in, and, you know, in the stage, and then now the rappers are like, what's going on, right? And all of a sudden, like 8 dudes bomb rush the stage with stocking masks and hoodies and just take the dudes out the stage. Pandemonium happens. They take the DJ out. They kick the sound man. And all of a sudden, Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with. And the place went bananas.
Wow.
Right. I've been telling this story for the last 20 years.
I get goosebumps whenever I hear that story.
And I got an interview with remezcla.com, and they found the video, and I'm on stage.
Oh, that's great.
Like, I never seen that. I never seen that. Like, they found the tape of it's called Jack the Rapper, Wu-Tang performance, and I'm on stage, like, looking like 20 years old. Like, it's just, I'm like, oh my God, that's me right there. That's what I've been saying, right?
There's proof.
So, yeah, man. So fast forward into the photo shoot. I never heard anything like it. Now I'm listening to the whole album, the entire production. I was in the dungeon, man. Like Raekwon and Method Man rapped in my ears. I was like, oh my God, they're spitting on my face. Like, this is crazy. I never heard this.
So you were closely intertwined there to really capture what they were going for.
Yeah, but you know, and mind you, I never worked with a camera. Like, I never been a journalist. You know, I was always an artist creating. I was more of a cinematographer, photographer. Yeah. You know, so I was.
Well, those covers are not, you know, documentary. Those are composed.
Yes, they're very composed. Yeah. So I was listening. I was inside their studio, listening to these beats and these bells and these Asian sounds and these kung fu flicks. And he was like, I want this to look like Enter the Dragon.
Enter the Dragon, right.
Enter the Dragon, like Bruce Lee. So I was like, wow, man, so I can get candles and I can get, you know, all this stuff and I can carve the Wu-Tang logo. Like, he only had a cassette with the Wu-Tang logo. So I was like, let's make that big and let's make like a shrine. And it was a collaborative idea. And, you know, because I came from like a very visual stimulating sort of background, I wanted to do that for hip hop. The day of the shoot, however, the shoot almost got canceled because we're here and there was only like 5 members in the Wu-Tang, and he was like, "Oh man, you know, all the boys are not here, so we're not gonna do this." I was like, "Wait, why don't we do what you did in Atlanta? So he was like, what do you mean? I was like, put a stocking mask on and just come like you bum rush that stage. If I was not in Atlanta at that point in my life, that cover wouldn't have happened. So yes, I was part of the culture, and I also was, doing something different, and I got the chance. I mean, and he was like, all right, you mean like not short faces? I was like, yeah, you're the Wu-Tang Clan. It's the clang. It's not. And he went with it, and the RZA went with it. It's like, all right, let's do it, and we did history.
Wow,
right there.
That's a great.
That
story.
the album sort of, it's one of, I think, Rolling Stone's 25th most influential albums.
Oh yeah, I mean,
of all times.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
And I think isn't it like a Wu secret as to who is actually
the photo?
like
Oh, yeah.
what
Yeah.
So obviously,
if,
RZA, who
if
was-
indeed it is any of them at all.
No, yeah. There's 5 of them.
yeah, because you don't. Yeah, it's well, obviously RZA was there.
RZA was there. Old Dirty was there. Inspector Deck, Ghost, Raekwon, and did I say Old Dirty?
You did, yeah.
And the GZA. It was 6 of them. Yeah.
Okay.
It was
So
6
you,
of them.
No, you got.
That's a crazy
No,
story.
you got no Method Man,
No meth.
no,
Thanks for that
no
story,
Master
bro.
Killer.
Thanks for that
Yeah,
story.
that's crazy.
that's wild.
Yeah, so it was. I
Really?
was
Wow.
also like, I'm almost like
Wow.
a problem solver. Like I never let an opportunity go. Like I know we gotta do this, and brain start going in, and all of a sudden, he was like, yeah, let's do it.
Maybe we can open up to that idea of this collaboration and
Yeah.
how you look to interpret the music through a visual. Is there anything that you can talk about that when you're working with artists and you say, listen, you look great now, you know, the fashion's there, but I want this image to reflect your music. How do you bring that about?
I feel like the artists that I feel like I made the most connection with are very collaborative. Like Lauryn Hill, for example, she already had the album titled Miseducation, so she came with the idea of a shooting, like, you know, in a school, and we scouted like these different schools, and then something was like, oh, we should maybe just go to your school. And she's from New Jersey as well, which I'm from, and I didn't even know until I was telling my mom, oh, I'm considered for this Lauryn Hill project. And she was like, oh, I know Lauryn Hill. I did her hair. And she still comes, you know, she was like, she still comes to the beauty salon and visits, like after she became famous. And somehow I guess I was older, so I wasn't hanging out at the mom beauty salon anymore. So after going to all these different schools, we had like a lot of meetings and went to her house and things like that. And yeah, she was very like, you know, she had her thing. And I always tell younger artists that the artists that I feel make the biggest connections with just the world and everything are lots tighter with what they bring to the table. They clearly expect us to make a cool visual, but I find like the ones that the images are usually pretty iconic, or they have really good ideas, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh, can we talk about that, the Lauryn Hill cover specifically? Sure. That's such a iconic cover. How was that done? Is it a drawing on the?
It's a photograph, but it's you know, just like retouching. They start with the photograph and start retouching it into an etching. And they showed me the cover, the idea for the cover, as if I had a say. You know what I'm saying? What do you think? Are you cool with your photo being like this? And I was like, of course, as long as something works. It's not really, you know.
So the what was etched was your photo.
Exactly.
And they etched that onto the desk.
Exactly.
Oh,
So we shot like so many different scenarios, and we didn't really know until, you know, that wasn't like the plan, say, going into the shooting. But then Urban is really great, and he was very close to Lauren, and they showed me this thing. And, you know, like I said, they were just kind of asking if I would be okay with that. And I just thought it looked really incredible. So,
Now, is that photo and the contact sheets that are accompany it part of?
Yeah, but
Contact
you know, they
High,
were
or?
like, you know, they were like, this photo, no one's going to see this photo ever, type thing, you know. And I was like, okay, you know. And you know, Lauren, I really respect her, and she's like, you know, so I don't like, you know, I play it cool. I play it cool with Russ. He's one of those people, you know?
Yep. Well, and that's been part of the challenge, I think, of doing this project is, contact sheets are they're working docs and they're private and they're kind of, they're behind the scenes. So certain contact sheets are just more challenging. And also, a lot of artists don't, Lauren. Sure. Also, we were close to getting the Lil' Kim hardcore cover, and the photographer just decided that they were
too hardcore.
Too hardcore. Yeah, and also, and then we would have also, and we didn't know like how Kim would feel about, showing all of the outtakes from that shoot. But yeah, it's a bummer because that's one of those. Like everyone remembers where they were when they saw that poster and plastered around New York.
Also, the difference too is between Danny was saying in regards to shooting for record labels versus shooting for. Somehow I end up thinking I think I shot more editorials and things for magazines, so that's why I feel like I had a little bit more room than the average. But also I think that's maybe had something to do with my photos leaking out into the world as well. But there's pros and cons to, the magazines. It's like no one really, the artist never looked back and has any issues with anything that you would share. But out of fairness, it makes sense when it's like I hired you to shoot this album cover, and if this is the only image I want the world to see, you kind of want to not,
respect that. Yeah,
yeah, totally.
Right.
Is there a hip hop aesthetic?
I think there's lots of aesthetics. Right now, Dapper Dan, you guys know who Dapper Dan is.
Got a photo of him from the other night.
Yeah, right. So he's like the architect of maybe hip-hop style. And, he basically made his own Gucci clothing at the time. And now he's collaborating with Gucci. And right now I'm looking through my pictures. I just put something up on Instagram of a picture of Sparky D, this woman rapper, wearing one of it, and she's hugging Millie Jackson, who's could be like the godmother of bad girl rap, and it's like they weren't fashion models, they were just wearing the clothes, and it's sort of come a full circle in a way, like what he did, what Dap did back in the day. Now Gucci is actually honoring him and collaborating, and they're going to do a store, I think, and they want pictures to hang on the wall. It's like so the style is really important and very iconic. And, it came from the street. Am I right?
And it evolved too. I think that in the 90s when money became more involved, because when I look at the photos of Janette, it's like I see the genuine personality in the style. But then by the 90s when I was coming along, it was like, all of the artists wanted to be like in a Calvin Klein campaign or something. So they started being more styled in a way that used fashion that, it was across the board.
Well, it was that thing when suddenly, you'd do an album cover and they needed a stylist. I mean, before, when I started doing, when I was here in the early 80s, nobody had money for stylists. You made your own clothes, or your mom made clothes, or you got them from Dapper Dan, or, and then suddenly, you're right, there was more money in the 90s, and every shoot, suddenly, like I did a shoot for Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5 in 1988, just speaking to that thing of people not turning up. And they had decided, the group had decided with the record company that they wanted the shoot to take place in a Rolls-Royce showroom. So I had to find a Rolls-Royce showroom, and they wanted 2 models in Lurex bikinis. So I hired my friend Ellen, who styled the models. And it was just like this crazy scene in this Rolls-Royce showroom. People would just, everybody was kind of, and they had written into the contract, they need a crate of Moet Chandon. So everybody is completely drunk. Everybody was out of order. Cowboy hadn't turned up. He was AWOL somewhere. Nobody knew where. So we had to put one of the roadies in his jacket. And then these 2 girls standing in these bikinis. And the guys are like running around, and Melly Mel's got his whip. And it was like a crazy scene. But it wasn't something that I personally had created as an idea like you. It wasn't like I thought, oh shit, those Pink Floyd covers. I know what you're talking about, by the way. Those are amazing.
I think a big moment when it started to change was when Puffy and Bad Boy started to come up, that's when you kind of started to see, the mastermind that was Puff with imagery, thinking about like what his artists were going to sound like, but also simultaneously what they were going to look like. And you had stylists, like that often, like Sybil Penix, who did, I think she did the Jodeci cover. Yeah. She did, a lot of styling for Mary J. Blige. I mean, she started as Puffy's assistant. And so she kind of knew his aesthetic and then like started, coming up like Mary's whole look, Tim's hat to the back, baggy clothes, like Pele, all that. Like, I feel like that moment really is when like the stylist and the thinking about like what's the album cover gonna look like, like what are the brands, you had like Groovy Lou, you had
Groovy,
like and I feel like that moment in time really signaled a change. And I think like Eric, when I talked to you about your Biggie and Faith Vibe cover, you kind of talk exactly about that. Like maybe if you want to tell that story.
So basically Vibe was like, they wanted to do a classic cover. They showed me these Rolling Stone type covers. And I was always like that kind of geek too. So it's like I'd always known those books back when I was a kid going to the record stores of the greatest album covers of all times, greatest magazine covers, things like that. So they wanted to do something like that. And they were very open. And it's like I felt like they hadn't really done any covers outside, maybe one by then. So I came with them. I found the car. We rented it, I think it was from a Bronxdale. And then I kind of thought it would be great to shoot underneath the Brooklyn Bridges because that's,
Is it Brooklyn Bridge Park? Is that where that is?
Well, there's two locations with people that know. It's like one location is, what do you call that little strip where you look down to the water? It's like 7th.
The promenade?
Like, it's like all of those little streets that...
In Dumbo, you're talking about.
Yeah, that is there. But then the nighttime shot is underneath the Brooklyn Bridge. And that's when, I was telling you one, but Biggie was like, so first up, so when Puffy and Big came to the shoot, he wasn't really comfortable with any clothes that they had for Biggie. So they left for hours and we just kind of all hung out.
Interesting. So he was real hands-on with picking out every detail.
Oh yeah, totally. So they came back hours later and I was always the type that was like, I liked the time and waiting. I love when artists were late because I'd have so much anxiety anyways. So by the time like everything, so I was just very comfortable with the fact that they were gone for hours and they came back, had us look all together. And so we did a couple of shots in the first location, but they gave us enough time that I would thought that, okay, since we lost after the day, we'll just have that one location. But they were like, no, we can go to the second shoot. So we went to the second shoot underneath the Brooklyn Bridge. At that point, it's like dark. It's completely nighttime. And Big was like, yo, man, that's where they dumped the bodies. That's where they dumped. And we were all like wrestling, trying to get everything done, and not barely interested. Now it's like Biggie is so important to all of us. It's like you kind of would have sat on every word and gave him all the attention, but we were just like, yeah. Like,
well, it's interesting kind of what we're getting at too, which is, I guess, the idea behind the book is that we're talking 20, 30 years now, and it is history. At the time, I think people, you're just getting this stuff done, and the aesthetics, they change fast, and now there's a time to kind of reflect. I mean, we're talking about, and you talked about looking back at contact sheets and seeing images that now may mean something that at the time necessarily didn't, or weren't as interesting as the shot you selected. So,
and also, looks in hip hop change all the time, right? I mean, it's about progression. It's about what's fresh right now. And it's. I mean, there's hints of the past, but I think that's part of the art form, right?
Yeah, like back then they wouldn't wear skirts and
exactly
and bags. Now they are,
right?
But and I mean, like one of the things I also explain is like rock and roll went through that too.
Yeah, definitely.
Like after the '80s, dudes were putting like lipstick on and long hair. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it's like, of course, hip hop is also going through that progression or evolution. Like today, the look is not the same as it was in the 90s. You know?
We have like a perfect example. I mean, we have, kind of almost the whole spectrum here of looks from the 80s forward.
I never shot without a stylist.
Oh, yeah.
All my shoots. Like, I think after the Wu-Tang, everything was stylists coming through. Like, everything was part of.
Any of you guys' shots were just calling up the artist and saying, hey, I want to get a shot of you? Or were they always kind of through a record label or a magazine? Or
me personally, it was all through a record label. I actually never worked for an artist. I always worked with a label. The label will contact me first, and through the label, I will meet the artist. Like they will arrange. I was kind of like a big deal back then. No, they will arrange the meeting, and I will meet the artist in their office and stuff like that. So I never met the artist before.
That probably gives you a certain a better deal of credibility when dealing with the artist, because if it's just you and the artist, you're kind of equals, and they can kind of control.
I heard horror stories.
Yeah, whereas if a record company says, this is who's going to be photographing you for our product,
right,
that has to give a different context to it.
And when the artist will see my work, then we're like, oh yeah, I want that guy. You know, that's the guy that I wanted, or whatever. And it was I went straight for the music industry.
But the time has changed too, right?
Oh yeah.
Now I feel like I'm more connected to artists than labels by far. You know, so
absolutely.
That's the change in the music industry, though.
Yes, totally. By the time it was like, okay, a publicist is like, I don't think my artist should be seen like that. I was like, oh, that's not exactly the imagery that I feel like I grew up when you would have a point of view. So I feel like it kind of made sense that in some ways that kind of made things crash and burn in a sense too. Now it's like kind of full circle where artists are in control of their own vision and everything. And basically with social media, see you on Instagram and hit you up and say, yo, I wanted you to do photos. And vice versa, you know?
And things don't have to be okayed. They just put them up, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Like some of my latest work is being with he's right, like with artists.
Yeah.
Because number one, artists, I think when they respect you now, they respect my work in terms of like, wow, you're legendary. I like to work with you. And I work with Taylor Momsen from The Pretty Reckless. And she wanted to basically, you know, have a full buyout. She wanted to do that. And we negotiated, right, in terms of like me negotiating with her and then me getting some residuals back for merchandising, like directly with the artist. And she has like 1 million followers, you know what I mean? So for me, it's an amazing time that I couldn't do that back in the 90s, right? And today record companies are not really interested in that because they want a full 360.
Right.
So he's right. Things are changing in terms of like now I can deal with an artist and be like, this is what I want. And they respect it, you know?
And having access to their social media, it's almost like the artist is more valuable than the label.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Some
of these artists have 1 million followers, and think about it. You strike a deal with them, you sell T-shirts, you get a residuals, that's going to be some good money.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, we are going to take a short break, and we're going to come back with more hip-hop, past, present, and future.
If you'd like to reach out to us with your questions or comments, email us at podcast@bhphoto.com.
Okay, we are back. Now we're going to start talking about the specifics about pictures and experiences and things of that sort.
I had a couple questions for Janette.
Yeah.
So there's obviously, I'm sure you get a lot of questions about this photo, but I'm going to ask anyway. The iconic Slick Rick with the champagne and the Fendi bag and the crotch grab.
Right.
What can you talk about that?
Well, that was I was hired by Def Jam to do a PR shoot for them for Slick Rick, and he's British and his whole style is kind of like something I was very used to seeing because I was living in Streatham when I was in London, and it's right by Brixton, and it's that kind of, Jamaican style of a sort of a smart, kind of almost mod-looking suit and a tie and,
totally.
The beret. He looked really good. So we decided to have him come, and, I'm very much... I don't like posing people, so I would have my studio set up and I'd have my little mark on the floor, and we gave him a bottle of champagne and we're hanging around chatting and listening to music and throwing it down, and Bill Adler, the PR's there, and we're chatting away, and, he's drinking, we're all having a good time, and then I'm like, okay, so let's take the picture, here's your spot. And I've got my camera set up. I don't really use a tripod. I'm like more free-flowing. So I go, just stand over here. And he just put his bag down on the floor, and he was still holding the bottle of champagne, and click, I took the picture. And it's like, it's just a moment. It's a moment in time, and I feel like it's so him. He's grabbing his crutch, and he's got this little smile on his face. It's just so hip hop to me.
Absolutely.
And, you know, I kind of love that, you know, it was really about our relationship at that moment, really.
Was that grab and that look at you, or was that did he take several shots with that pose?
You know, there was just, well, you wait till you see the contact sheet. There's a few shots, but that one is the one. There's no doubt about it. It just has everything in it that said, you know, everything about that moment, and, you know, how we were in the studio. We were just relaxed, and he was just like, yo, that's it.
Do you think being from England, you know, and having that connection kind of informed the session at all? Was it?
You know, maybe, yeah. I mean, we were just chatting, you know, and everybody knew, you know, I was like crazy British photographer.
Yeah.
That had this little studio down on Lafayette Street. So. Yeah, I mean, maybe it did, but
he probably didn't run into that every day. I mean,
and, you know, that was always my thing.
Yeah.
That people really, when I first came here, I mean, people hadn't met people from England. You know, you would go out to, you know, far-flung Brooklyn. They hadn't met people from Britain before because people didn't travel. People didn't have money. And, you know, I could have been from Mars as far as, you know, a lot of people were concerned. So, you know, that was always a good starting point conversation.
What was your look back then? Were you like looking like a punk, or kind of new wave, or were you into the hip hop look? Or
you know what? I was probably still wearing it, probably exactly what I'm wearing
Doc
right
Martens,
today.
something like
You know, I was probably wearing, you know, like some kind of sneakers in the summer, or Docs in the winter, white Levi's.
And a nun's habit.
Yeah, and a nun's habit, and a T-shirt. I mean, that was, my look is pretty much exactly what I'm wearing today. You know, in the winter, after 1988, when I got my Def Jam jacket from Def Jam with my name on it, embroidered in it, I would be wearing that all the time, of course.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And what were you shooting? You shooting Hasselblad?
I was shooting pretty much everything on the Hasselblad. And so and I'm very minimal with equipment. I never wanted to have a lot of equipment. Partly I'm small. I don't like carrying a lot of heavy stuff. And I never had the money to buy a load of cameras. And I just thought, you know, no insult to the guys, but it was like a boy thing to have, you know, I got 8 lenses, and I've got, you know, here's my long lens, and here's my other camera, and I got the, you know,
Freudian.
I've got the XT.
So you do understand then.
Yeah,
Okay.
I get it.
You understand.
I
Okay.
totally get why you guys need that.
Yeah.
I do. But we women, we don't need to rock that. But you know, it's all that. So I don't mean to disrespect you guys.
No, I'm kidding.
You know.
We have to compensate.
They can handle it.
It's compensation.
It's not your fault. But I just, you know, that's exactly it. But I just had like one Hasselblad body and some backs and a Polaroid back.
Even for the street stuff? Even on the street?
Yeah, and I would go on the train. I mean, when I did that picture of Run DMC out in Hollis, Queens.
That was my next question there.
Oh, shall I?
No, keep going.
A commission for the Face magazine, which was like a really iconic, I have to say, British style magazine, style music.
Yep.
You guys, I'm sure, all saw it. It was great, and I'd worked on it from the very first issue. And they knew I'd moved here, so they were always calling me, and they're like, oh, there's this new group, Run DMC. And I didn't know who they were, 1984. Here is a phone number. Just call this number. So it turned out to be Jam Master Jay's mom's house, I think. They were like, hi, you know, I'm Janette, I'm from The Face. You know, and then what's that? It's a British magazine, we want to come to. And they're like, okay, you know, come, you know, next Tuesday, meet me at the Hollis Queens station. And I didn't know where Hollis was. Not being from here, I didn't know what type of neighborhood it was going to be. You know, I was used to going up to the Bronx and Harlem and whatever. So I just jump on the train with my Hasselblad, and I've got the backs all loaded because I was, you know, ready for action. And got out at Hollis, and there's Jay, and he's like, hey, you know, walks me down the street. And it's like this beautiful tree-lined street. Looks, you know, like some really nice kind of suburb, nice houses. There's a bunch of guys hanging out by a car. And I'm like, oh, hi, you know. You look great. Just get a little closer. I took the picture, and that picture is maybe one of my best pictures, I hate to say, that I've ever taken. Hopefully I'm trying to aspire to do something better still. Always aspiring. But I really love that picture because it's such a moment in time. Like, some people are looking at cameras, some aren't. The styles, you know, it's got Adidas, it's got Gazelles, it's got, you know, what everybody's wearing is very iconic and classic. Kangol's. and it's like dappled sunlight. And it was sort of a turning point in a way because, you know, before you thought of hip-hop as coming from the boogie down Bronx, you know, burnt out buildings, and then suddenly you're on this sort of tree-lined street, and there's cars, and people are dressed nicely, and they've got like a little mixer. And
well, you feel family, you know, you feel family, neighborhood, you feel those kind of bonds. Yeah.
Totally, and it really did change everything. And it was so crazy back in the day because you just had this phone number of someone's house. You didn't know who you were calling. There was no cell phones. There's no, you know, internet. There's no way of getting in touch with people, you know. So if that person isn't there, you know, that's it. That's the end of that. So it was always an adventure.
Yeah, you really get the sense that, you know, they're in their hometown in that picture. Like, and, you know, doing what they usually do.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's got a very natural feeling to it. It's just that, you know, I always feel like I'm sort of somewhere between a documentary and a portrait photographer. So you just want to capture that moment.
Can I actually throw that question out to you guys about posing people? How do you feel about it? How do you do it? Any tricks? What do you think?
I mean, it depends. Some people pose really good, and some poses just don't, you know, like. So
even amongst performers, you find some of them are hard to have in front of a camera?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like you got to kind of understand the artist that you're shooting. Some people are timid.
Do you guys listen to all the work of the people that you shoot? I mean, did you
try
make a point of it?
Well, I mean, because I did album covers, I had to definitely listen to. But let's say a person like Nas, for example. Nas, it takes him, from what I remember, because I only shot him like 2 times, it takes him a minute to like get acclimated with the set, you know. So, you know, I'm not gonna have somebody like that posing right away. You know what I mean? I let him sit down,
right,
I let him
chill,
let him chill, and then we talk, and you know, you get the conversation. Maybe I get him more into like a pensive state, like thinking about something and reminiscing and things like that, and all of a sudden you start the chemistry, because as a photographer you're kind of like a movie director too. Like you have to get the subject, you have to capture that moment, you have to direct them, get them comfortable. Some artists, they already come
ready to go,
ready to pose, ready to, and then they might have that flashy attitude and that they want to portray, and I capture that too. So I kind of.
Any stories about having to kind of tell somebody to kind of, you know, enough of the flash, enough of the pose, I want the real you, and how do you kind of remove those layers? Yeah,
well, when I shoot, I will do like maybe like 4 or 5 sets in one day, you know. So I will have plenty of time. I used to have like a little sort of. Like I will get all the publicity stuff out first, right? Like, you know, white background, publicity stuff, you know, and then the publicity stuff, a record company will hire you to do, you know, an entire package. This is a product. You were shooting a CD cover, a product, right? So you had to kind of like cover.
What's a CD?
Yeah, exactly, right? You have to cover all bases. You have to cover your marketing, you know, pictures, your album cover, your publicity shots, like everything. So I would like to sort of always get that publicity stuff out, because that's when they were like flashy and this and that, right? And by the time that they progress, I would really end up with like the creative stuff, right? Where now I took care of like, quote unquote, the boring requirements of the record label, right? And then all of a sudden now I get to play, so I will get lighting and this and that and more conceptual towards the end.
Hopefully by that time you know the person better.
Yeah, and by that time, I mean, it was like, you know, 10, 12, sometimes 14, 16-hour day.
Yeah.
So
you were talking about Nas. Can you talk about the I Am album cover? Is that just any stories there? Or?
Yeah, I was always doing crazy stuff, man. The concept came from his first album and second album being a boy in front of the projects, and then the second being a man, and then the third album, the art director was like, we really want to do like him as a king, like, you know, and the idea was like King Tut, right? The sarcophagus. And I was like, oh man, I got this great sculptor, and his name is Dave Cortez. Today, Dave Cortez is one of like the top toy sculptors of the world. Like he does everything from the Hulk to Spider-Man to everything. Just Google him; it's incredible. So I hired him then to sculpt that sarcophagus face, and the process was to put clay in his face, and we did. Nas was really, with it, and it was something different, and we put clay on his face. But after 5 minutes, all of a sudden he started kicking and jerking and stuff. It was like the clay was going on his nose because apparently we didn't, or Dave didn't set up the cotton with the straws, and it was going through the straws, and he was like,
"Oh wow,
we were almost killing Nas."
You almost killed Nas.
Yeah, man, and we're like, oh man, we had to get the clay because it was also getting hard because it's like a quick drying clay, and then man, we had to get that shit out of his face, and it was like,
really?
We didn't kill Nas. He's okay, thank God. That's hilarious. He was a great sport. We did it again. And man, yeah, man, that could have gone the other way.
Wow,
it could have gone wrong fast.
I have a question it's not specific to hip hop. It has to do with the fact we've been talking about. You guys started off shooting for LPs, where you have a 12 by 12 inch canvas, and then it goes down to CDs, which is a quarter that size, and now we're dealing with little thumbnails that okay. Do you find that your approach to photographing these musicians has changed now that you have a smaller vehicle to portray? In other words, as the picture size comes down, you can't get as elaborate and detailed. You have to deal with stronger, bolder shapes and a simpler content, visual content. You can't squeeze too much information into a small area. Has that affected you at all?
Well, I mean, but you're only seeing just one thing. I think right now a record, it's not a product anymore, as in a campaign, like a website, the opening page. There's a lot of things that go into place. Okay, so you can still shoot the same way. Yeah. I don't think a record right now is it's that. It's just, I think it's a whole campaign, a whole.
So you still get to play and push the envelope.
You still do. Yeah, right, absolutely.
For sure. And, someone's going to put it up on the screen. It's going to be the size of your computer screen, which could be bigger than 12 by 12.
Yeah.
And I just miss seeing them in the window of Tower Records.
I really do.
Because that used to be so hot.
Man,
you'd walk out and oh, that's my EPMD cover. Wow.
Man, it was great.
Well, and also being able, to turn them around and see what's on the back. Yeah. A lot of times the photo that was on the back, like Danny, your Hard to Earn cover was Guru and Premier on the front, but on the back it was the whole Gangstar Foundation and seeing,
Absolutely.
I used to love, the inside sleeves, the back.
Definitely. One time going into what she's saying about Tower Records and Virgin Megastore, I had 3 records at the same time, in the 42nd Street, where they have 4 spots. 3 of the records were mine on 42nd Street.
Amazing.
And I was like, I took a picture. You understand how amazing that felt going into a record
But was
store?
it deflating with the end of the day you had to still swipe your Metro card to get on the train? After all that.
It was tokens back in the day.
Talking about the...
Oh, well, you know what? I feel like the one thing I've learned kind of from the internet and everything is that basically I have no idea what's going to happen in the future. So it's it doesn't really affect the way that you do anything, because if someone has said, oh, your photos that were in a magazine cover for 30 days is going to be here forever, it's kind of like the same approach to life now. I don't know that if it seems like it's a thumbnail now, that it won't be at some point in the future this photo that in some medium is completely huge again.
Yeah,
right. You know what I'm saying?
That's really true.
And then in addition to that, you were asking about the posing thing, but to me, I feel like my style a little bit is more than having people pose. It's you kind of create an environment that inspire people to produce what you're interested in. So whether it be the music, whether it's the location, you know what I'm saying? It's like it's still collaborative in that way. I wouldn't say to pose this way specifically, but you set a tone that kind of inspires people to be where you are.
And it's very much about, the collaboration, your relationship with a person. It's like Danny was saying, you talk to them, you get them relaxed and, you're chilling and then suddenly like, okay, you're on and they feel good.
Yeah. Do you guys usually
play music? And they can
music?
do their thing.
Usually play
music always.
Is part of it.
And the music of the artist you're shooting, or is that sometimes
all
not the
of
way
it?
to go?
It doesn't matter.
It depends. Whatever they're into.
They might want to listen to Aretha Franklin. That's fine by me.
Music is definitely part of it.
Oh, yeah, depending on the mood.
Yeah.
For sure, you always had a lot of
And Danny, what were you shooting? What was your setup, your cameras back then? Do you remember?
I had everything.
Yeah.
There you go. What'd I tell you?
Dude, I even had a 4x5 field camera that I took into shoots and will cover myself and the bells. Like I was in love with the entire
gear junkie.
Everything, man. Like I own a Hasselblad. I own an RC67. Like I graduated to the RC67, and recently, like I tried to shoot with that. I was like, that shit was so heavy, man. Like how could I do this all day?
Lift with your knees. Lift with your knees. Remember,
all day. Like all these big covers that I did. I started with the Hasselblad, and then I loved the frame rate of the RC67, right? That gave you more of a rectangular, but it wasn't so rectangular that like the 35 millimeter, it was close to square. Like I love that. I love their lenses, and I started really using the R67. But
the 36 chambers, what was that? Hasselblad?
RC67.
Oh, it was.
Yeah,
okay.
that was the RC67. Yeah, Mamiya.
Can you break down technically how you shot that? Because you have like the kind of the long exposure. They're on the sides. You can see like the candles kind of blurring, but then it's sharp in the middle.
Yeah. Well, I think like I learned pretty early like what a strobe does and how to react and what happens to an image when that burst of light comes in and just hits it, right? And I was doing a lot of experimentation with strobe and available light and sunsets, and I will be like the first one to bring like a Norman 400B, which was like a first portable strobe that you'll carry on your shoulder, and then
laughably portable by today's standards.
Right, laughably,
I've owned 3
because
of them.
you will only get like maybe 40 pops if any, like you will. And even before that, I actually will take like a mashed potato, right, and put a cable to the thing and move it outside the camera to use it as a strobe, because I understood that once you remove that strobe, then all of a sudden you have studio lighting. Because
once you get off the camera.
Once you get off the camera, man, you have creative lighting, right?
Yeah.
So when I got to shoot the Wu-Tang, I already had a clear understanding that when the strobe goes off and you have that shutter speed open, all the available light will also...
It'll be recorded onto the film.
Yeah, it will be recorded. It will change the image, right? So I will shoot in the dark. I will shoot in the dark, and then whatever available light we'll have, I will let that sort of play with the image, right? So in that particular shoot, the candles were available light, right? The strobe will go, and then everything will be in the dark, and then will move the camera a little bit to give it so the candles look moved, right? And then there was also, I had tungsten light in the back pointing towards the logo. So there you have like, that also will look blurry a little bit, but the guys will look sharp because that burst of light will come through. You'll get that. And since you're shooting in the dark, it will not get affected. So that it was a combination of shutter speed, aperture, and like how steady I can hold the camera. I will always kind of shoot, I will say very open, like 5.6, f-stop, and then because then I wouldn't have to on the shutter speed, I could go like maybe a half a second or not so long of exposure, not so long that because once you pass a second, then everything is too shaky, right? So I would kind of play with that, a combination of that, and then magic will happen.
What are you shooting now?
I'm a 5D fan.
5D?
I was always a Canon guy. My first camera was the Canon A1. Mm-hmm. To this day, I have it, and I love it. Cool. And then as I started, switching to digital, I started kind of selling all my film stuff, and I got into 5D. I love the 5D.
Wait, do you have the new the Mark IV?
Yeah, I have the Mark IV. Yeah, and once, and I don't know if they share the same feeling, but once this 35 millimeter camera started also giving you the possibility to shoot video, I never went back. It's almost like technology caught up with me. And I say that because I always wished when I was shooting the Wu-Tang that I could have recorded that with video, with a good video, because the video that was available back then was horrible. It was like security cameras today, right? So, right? So I always feel like, wow, man, if I would have had that 5D back then, right, to record what I saw, right? And today, once video came in those cameras, man, I was like, I started shooting movies, I started shooting videos, and now I'm more of a cinematographer than a photographer.
How about Eric? I know I read that you said you only shoot digital, but if they pay you enough, or was that the phrase?
I mean, only because basically I just never really figured it out, and it's like I always felt super talented with the camera, and it's like whenever I shoot something digitally, I felt like I was crap as a photographer. So just based on the way that it came out, made me not really go down that route. And so even as far as films, I've been shooting 16 millimeter movies. So, I mean, it's like even with moving imagery, I still film everything pretty much for the most part.
How much of an effort is it to keep shooting film though? Is it?
I don't know. That's what people ask. But in a way, I think because they're like, oh, is it expensive? But I think because I never really stopped, I can't really tell the difference. I don't have like a lot of expensive digital equipment either. So I don't know if it balances out or anything, but I just kind of like, in addition to bigger budget things, I've also always shot like a lot of things that were little to no budget just because I was inspired. So you just kind of find a way you create a style in a way that kind of supports you being able to do something that's got a smaller budget sometime as well, So, I mean, if that means like sometimes you shoot like so little film, like one roll or whatever, or...
Yeah.
So, You're
just always aware of the cost of a roll of film. Roll of film, develop and process, and then you'd go in the dark room. Everything had a price ticket to it. So if you'd shoot 2 rolls of 120, you knew how much that cost, and make a really
nice... The larger
nice...
the format, the more judicious you are about when you press that button.
Exactly.
Plus, too many people are involved, I think, because basically before digital, you trust the photographer, and it's like when in the few scenarios that I was on, and someone would be looking at the monitor and say, "Let's do that again this way," I just felt like something about that wasn't supposed to happen.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like It's like some random person is like, "I like that, but only if you turned a little bit more of that." And I was like, "What are they? Who are they to have any opinion in any of this?"
Yeah, because it used to be you'd do one Polaroid and everybody would look at it and you go, how's the... Because I always use the Polaroid for the lighting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Does everybody like the lighting? Yes. And it wasn't anything to do with the posing or the way the person looked. And then you'd just do the shoot. And then we'd all look at it, 3 days later. But now it's like everybody... You do a couple of shots, you put it up on the computer, everybody gathers around, I'm not sure, the hair. And you're right, it's too many opinions, and you lose a little bit of the spontaneity like that, I think.
So, Eric, on the, maybe the 2 shot, we talked a bit about the Lauryn Hill album cover. Do you remember what you shot, what you were using?
Yeah, I shot a Mamiya 6x7 as well. I mean, it's very easy to me because I was like Janette in the sense that I'm not really super technical. So, I mean... I had the 6x7, and now I have you shoot the 35. And if something required more than that, I would just rent it. I never really had like a lot of equipment or anything like that. So most of the shots is maybe a 6x7.
Then I wanted to mention the Hot Boys photos with Lil Wayne, which would look like you were just kind of hanging with them.
In a way, that was kind of like a little bit of a turning point because it's like this. I had this friend, I have all kinds of quirky personalities, friends in my life, and this one dude that was in jail I used to be really cool with, and he says,
That's the best intro I've heard in a while.
So he would say, like, listen, let's, so send me photos, but, send me photos as if, like, Pink was sitting in your living room hanging out. And I was like, oh, wow, that's so interesting. And it kind of inspired something because I was like, oh, shoot, I get it. I think people are really maybe past like things being so produced and so retouched. So I kind of went after having gone through that period with, with those photos a bit more set up. And remember I was saying I didn't really like have such a history of being that involved in it as much as I would just show up. So this conversation with my friend who I was going back and forth with and, writing letters and things like that inspired me to create photos that were a little bit more as if I was hanging out with people. And I got the Contax cameras and started mixing it between things a bit more set up. So now I look back and it's like, cool, times change, but I'm like, oh, those clubs in the late 80s and this and that, like all of those times that I didn't have that kind of style and that kind of camera, I missed something, but I got something else. Yeah, that was the deal. I kind of started being a little bit more of a fly on the wall.
Was that down in Louisiana?
That was down in Louisiana. Yeah, that shoot. And I think I also shot the Dipset guys in a similar way than that as well. And Erykah Badu and all those kids.
That Dead Prez shot too that's on your site.
Yeah.
That was pretty cool.
I wanted to ask about that. Where was that? The Dead Prez shot?
The Dead Prez. Oh, that was either for Dazed and Confused, because I think he worked for the Face too, but I think that was after they collapsed or something. But those magazines like that, which were my absolute favorite, and they never had any kind of budget. I just feel like it was like, okay, let's meet up. And I feel like those guys were very like, they're deep, and they're like, oh, I want to shoot in like, say, like a record store and a bookstore. So it was really as simple as that. I think we took some photos in a taxi going from one location to the other, but just with a 35 camera. And like I said, I had to come up with that style like that because I wanted to keep producing, and I didn't, it's like I didn't want to spend my own money on having a team of people around me to make a photo look a certain way. And in addition to that, I just thought that people kind of liked the intimacy part.
Especially the Dipset shot, because you don't really see pictures of them like that. You know what I mean? It's more glitzy, you know what I mean? More, I don't know, mixtapey kind of, and with that, those kind of documentarian almost shots, right, where it was an interesting way. They specifically the one with Jewels and Cameron.
Yeah. I mean, but in the beginning they were always like, even now they're like, that's one of my favorite shoots. That was one of my all-time favorite shoots. But I found out after the case that the record company wasn't really filming the shoot that much, and I think they were saying that because at that point everything looked so big and expensive. So it's kind of, give indication that at the end of the day, those photos of him would be so important, but the record company was being very indifferent. But I was just like,
you see those pictures around, though.
Everywhere.
You see it. You see that shot everywhere.
Totally.
Yeah.
How important it is to kind of stand your ground in those cases and say, you know what, you may not like it, but I like it, they like it in 20 years.
I wasn't thinking 10, 20 years in the future, but I was always pretty comfortable in my own skin. So I didn't really feel like Suits necessarily had a better idea of, like I said, my friend in jail is telling me what people are into in the world, and I was always that type that was curious about more alternative type of personalities and conversations. So I didn't feel like those squares could really tell me what to do.
What was cool and what wasn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Can you talk about the Aaliyah vibe?
Okay, so the Aaliyah was basically, everyone thinks it's for Vibe because basically...
Oh, that wasn't for Vibe?
No, it was shot initially for Entertainment Weekly, and I was like in 2001. That was before she passed away, and I just felt like there was something about it's interesting that Aaliyah, and there's so many of her fans that I've become friends with online, but it's like basically it's as if like they all think that Leah and I had this really like big history, but I know that there was photographers she'd worked with more than me because I'd only met her that one time. And so I shot her for Entertainment Weekly, mostly because I was like interested in Leah. So I was like, I'll shoot her for anywhere. So we shot that photos, and then she passed so soon afterwards. So, but before then, before she passed, she hit me up and wanted to see the contacts, and I sent her the contacts, and she marked which ones she liked. And for someone who didn't know her, like compared to those other photographers, I felt like in a weird kind of way, she left me to tell part of her story with, okay, this is what I like. And then she passed away, and those photos became, her fans, her followers became so attached to that shoot. But that was just our one exchange, And then because I'd worked with them and I had a good relationship with them, they knew about the shoot. So they were like, oh, we're calling in photos of Aaliyah because she just passed away. And so that photo clearly became a bigger photo in the context of a magazine cover, became bigger than the inside story that Entertainment Weekly had done, that they kind of took the shoot from Entertainment Weekly and owned it kind of,
So it ended up on that was like the memorial cover, right? Yeah.
Are there any photos maybe like this that you never expected to be as big as they were?
I think most of them. I mean, because you're just out there taking pictures. Yeah. You're doing it, you're in it, you're in the moment, and you never really expect that 30 years later, some of these things are going to be, labeled so-called iconic images. Right. To me, it's amazing to have that history.
Or maybe this is maybe the classic cheesy question, but is there one photo that you might look back and say that's the photo the hip hop photo anyway, that I'm going to be remembered for? Or that's a photo the one photo?
In my case, that Run DMC and Posse picture is just, to me, it just is a lot about the way I work. Yeah. It's documentary, it's a moment in time. Turns out, they weren't known at that point. They weren't a big group. A lot of the groups that I shot and I'm still shooting now are not big. Were not big at the time. So I think maybe that's my shot.
Yeah. Danny?
I think undeniably the 36 chambers, it's what people mostly sort of gravitate to. I do have a lot of contenders, on the portfolio, sure. Right? But that's...
What's a personal favorite?
Wow. I will have to say the J. Rue the Damager. You can't... The Sun Rises in the East. Because if you go back into that, it kind of has like... It was based on a wordplay that he did before that, like blowing spots like the World Trade Center. And this was like 1993, way before 9/11. And in the picture you see almost like 9/11, the image. But this is like 10 years before. So it hits home pretty like crazy. I have phone calls like, oh my God, you predicted 9/11 on this picture. And it's kind of crazy and scary, Yeah. Like when you see the album cover, you're like, it kind of looks like 9/11 10 years before it happened.
It's funny.
So
there's a lot of hip hop imagery that took place in front of
the World Trade Center.
The World Trade.
It
was very symbolic,
I personally did like 20 photo shoots in front of World Trade Center. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
Eric?
I don't know that I'm... it's like when I'm asked a favorite, I kind of feel a lot more, I think, detached from my images than other people do that are looking at them. But I would just say that probably the Biggie and Faith photo would be like the photo that people probably would feel connected to. And the way that I would too is because there's definitely something moody and darker about it for the context of a magazine cover. And I remember George Pitt saying, you know what, I thought it would be a bit more lit. And I still was like, and I remember when it was out for that 30 days, whenever I saw the magazine cover, I felt really uncomfortable. And it was kind of like that day when the new magazine came along, I felt like more at ease for some reason. But as far as the surprise a little bit is the Aaliyah shoot, I feel like is more unlike my photos than my other photos in the way that I don't think that it's nearly as gritty or anything or have like that kind of edge. And I feel like I followed her lead and she was the boss. And I felt like she inspired me to not play any games, you know what I'm saying, and not try and be cool and just capture her. And that was my only shoot, I feel like, in a way that's really like that. So for the kids to be so attached to it, I'm like, you know, I definitely believe in feeling my way around in life as well, though, you know? And I think that's a classic version of that happening.
Cool.
Vikki, anything you want to wrap up with? I don't know.
I just think, you know, I just personally have been a fan of the three people, you know, that we're interviewing here in the room. And, you know, doing this book and doing this project and just seeing, you know, the camaraderie amongst the documentarians of hip hop. And it's just been a really, really great.
Most everybody's been really positive about.
Yeah. I mean, and they,
examples.
you know, and they recognize each other's work. And it's for the most part, you know, they realize that they were part of building this big narrative. So it's just been really, really great. And, you know, I'm looking forward to the book and traveling the exhibition. And
Okay.
All right.
Okay, that's another show for the history books. If you want to see additional visual content pertaining to today's show, you can visit the following sites. We have JanetteBeckman.com. We have DannyHastingsPhotography.com, upstairs at erics.org, and ContactHighProject.com. You guys want to throw anything else into that? Where you're going to be? Where you're showing stuff? New things coming up?
We were talking earlier about the in regards to people ripping off your stuff and putting on T-shirts and things like that. So basically, we flipped from being offered deals to put our images on things to starting our own company, apparel company. And so we are starting a big launch with the images of the Notorious B.I.G. and Faith from Biggie's estate. It's all official. Everything's cool. And we were doing something with the Lee as well. But so I met this really great designer in Berlin, Stefano Platti, who's doing the design. And we're collaborating with him and Biggie's estate. And then ultimately we're going to put out a lot of other fun visuals. So
That sounds cool.
pretty psyched about that.
Is the brand have a name?
Yeah, it's Upstairs at Eric's.
There you go.
Upstairs at Eric's is the clothing brand, and a lot of that stuff is pretty much designed and being sampled up now. It's gonna be beyond like just T-shirts and hoodies and things but it's gonna be really officially designed fashion clothing. So that's gonna be coming out in the new year.
Cool. Sounds great.
Cool.
Nice.
Danny?
You could check me on Instagram, Danny Hastings. And I'm finishing my second feature. I do comedy.
Nice.
I do comedy film. I'm really into the whole digital filming evolution. I'm really enjoying the fact that you don't have to wait for people to give you money. You could just do it yourself. You know, with the camera. Right now, I have all the facilities. I have the digital camera, the editing bay, the studio, and we're making movies, man. And my dream back then was to have a movie in the movie theaters. My dream today is to have people watch my movie in a cell phone. Like, if I have 2 million people watching my movie in a cell phone, that's a dream come true. Like, you know, it's evolving to that. So check me on Instagram, Danny Hastings. You'll see what's coming.
Cool.
I have a exhibition on November 3rd opening at 212 Arts, which is on Avenue B and 4th Street in the East Village. And it's hip-hop screen prints, legends of hip-hop. And I've kind of arted up my old archive, and they look really different, and they're looking pretty beautiful, and there's a box set you can buy, and so I'm excited about that. That's
The
coming
prints?
up.
They're screen prints?
They're screen prints. I'm working with this guy, Gary Lichtenstein Editions, out in Jersey City, and we're making, it's editions, so...
How big are they?
Check that out.
Some of them are like 30 by 40, and some of them are 11 by 14. So
Cool.
something for everybody.
Nice.
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
Would you have like some of the Clash stuff in there?
No, I haven't gotten around to the punk stuff yet. That's the next edition. Right now, it's just strictly hip hop at this round.
And your books and stuff, everything can be found through your website. Is that the best way to find stuff?
Most of my books are sold out, but you know, obviously follow me, Janette Photo on Instagram.
Okay.
That's it.
There you go. Instagram's the way.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay, well, awesome show. Thank you, Vikki. Thank you, Janette. Thank you, Danny. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Jason Tables and John Harris, as always. And thank you all so much for tuning in today. We hope you've enjoyed this Thanksgiving Encore show featuring a history of hip-hop photography, originally recorded on November 10th, 2017. Now, one editorial note, events mentioned by our guests at the end of the show were current as of the 2017 episode release date. We retain the detail as a fun historic reference, but don't try to look up these events. They happened already. With that said, if you're a fan of the show, but not yet a subscriber, head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts and click subscribe. You can also find this on the Explorer blog, where we post photos from our guests along with our show notes. And please join us on Facebook and the B&H Photography Podcast group, where you can share your favorite photos and comments about the show. I'm your host, Alan Weitz. Jill Waterman is our creative producer. Episodes are recorded, mixed, and edited by technical producer Mike Weinstein. Our executive producer is Bjorn Peterson, and our editorial director is Sean Steiner. On behalf of all of us, thank you so much for tuning in today, and again, happy Thanksgiving.